and welcome back to Tales from the World's Firesides. I'm Clive Gilson, the story guy. Today I'm telling a traditional Spanish folk tale called Elvira, the Sainted Princess. The source for this tale is Charles Seller's original, taken from a book called Tales from the Land of Nuts and Grapes, published in 1888 by the Leadenhall Press and others. This tale appears in my book Tales from the Land of Rabbits, which contains over 40 traditional Spanish and Portuguese folk tales. As ever, my main aim is to tell stories that might otherwise be forgotten or lost to modern readers, tales that help us share our cultures and maybe make the world a little less complex. Right, that's enough of that. Let's get on with the story. Elvira, the Sainted Princess. Wamba was king of the Goths, who inhabited the northern part of Lusitania. He was one of the bravest kings that ever reigned, and the walls of his palace still stand as evidence of the skill with which he studied to improve his capital. But although he was wise, he was not a good man, and his bravery in war was not tempered by mercy. Like all his predecessors, he was cruel to his victims and was more feared than loved. Wamba had but one daughter, Elvira, whose mother was a princess of the Moorish family reigning in Andalusia. She was so beautiful and so good that she contributed in no small degree in rendering her father's reign famous. Her long hair was of a lovely glossy black, her eyes of the same dark hue, had all the softness of her race, and it was this very tenderness of look that gave majesty to her appearance. Now, in those days, there were very few Christians in Europe. The crescent of the prophet had overcome, for a time, the cross of the Saviour. Now, to the teachings of an old man, who in secret worshipped the true God, Elvira owed the first lessons she got of Christianity, and once the good seed was sown, it multiplied. Wamba did not know that his daughter was a Christian, but he knew that she was very good, and that, for her goodness, she was very much beloved by all of his subjects. Now it so happened that in the dungeon of his palace there were many prisoners condemned to death by starvation, and it perplexed the king to know how it was that they continued to live. Every morning he would ask of the jailer if the prisoners had died, and the answer was that they seemed quite well. So one day he hid in a nook of the staircase, hoping to find out who fed his prisoners. He didn't have long to wait, for he soon saw Elvira descending, followed by a young courtier, Alaric, and carrying something in her apron. Now Elvira, unknown to her father, had been in the custom of carrying bread to the poor prisoners, and she was assisted in her work of mercy by her lover, Alaric. When she got close to the king, he started out of his hiding place, and seizing her by the arm, she, in her fright, let fall her apron, out of which fell beautiful roses, into which the bread had been transformed. Great was the surprise of the king, for he thought she had been carrying victuals. Then, in his rage, he said, "Elvira, you are in league with the evil one. You and your lover shall die." Elvira and Alaric were themselves so astonished at what had taken place that they could not speak, and they allowed themselves to be led away to separate jails without offering any explanation. Wamba then had it proclaimed that next day his daughter Elvira and her lover Alaric would be burnt in the public square for having dealings with the evil one. Many of his oldest courtiers tried to persuade him that he was too precipitate, but he was not to be moved, and all that night Elvira and Alaric were preparing to meet their death. At the first ray of light, Wamba was up, and with his soldiers and executioners he hurried to the public square. Elvira and Alaric were led among a strong body of men, and everything was being prepared for burning of the lovers, when Elvira's old tutor presented himself before Wamba and said, "Know, O king, that your daughter fears not death, for her comfort is in her faith. If anyone be to blame, it is me, for I instructed her. Let me then be burned in her stead." Wamba gazed fiercely at the old man, and, raising his massive olive staff, surmounted by a gold crown, he exclaimed, "You shall also die, but not before you have witnessed her sufferings." Your God is a false God, but if he has true power to save all of you, then he shall cause this ancient olive staff to grow and throw out green leaves by tomorrow morning, or else you shall all die." And saying this, he stuck his royal staff into the ground. Elvira was to be allowed to remain close to the staff, but with no one with her, and, so that she might not escape, guards were posted all around the square. Kneeling at the side of that emblem of authority, which for generations had been wielded by her ancestors, Elvira gave vent to her prayers and tears, and the latter fell so quickly that they moistened the ground. And when morning came, Wamba, on arriving, saw his royal staff growing. A sapling then, but shortly to grow into a tree, even as the Christian faith in its sapling stage was to throw out its spreading branches over the kingdom, till they all became one people, loving but one God. Wamba then caused a church to be built near the spot, and that church still exists, and the olive tree grows by its side, giving the name of Olive Tree to the square. Alaric, of course, was married to Elvira, and Wamba, having been called to the grave of his forefathers, these two reigned conjointly, and they appointed their old tutor as their counsellor. Okay, that's the story of Elvira, the Sainted Princess. Tales from the Land of Rabbits is available in hardback, paperback and ebook formats from all good retail and online bookstores. And if you've enjoyed the story, you can find out more about the book and about me, Clive Gilson, the story guy, and the Tales from the World's Firesides project at clivegilson.com. There's also dedicated Facebook and YouTube channels in the banner at the bottom of the screen. I would really appreciate it if you could hit that like button. It always helps to keep these stories front and centre, and please do follow or subscribe to these channels if you want to hear new stories pretty much every week. And there's quite a big set of stories already up and in the various different channels. But that's it for now, though. So until next time, keep reading, keep watching and listening, and stay inspired.